The U.S. airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against Iranian-backed militias are just the beginning of a campaign that the Pentagon says could last weeks. Will they deter further attacks against U.S. forces in the region and international shipping in the Red Sea, or could this escalate into a broader war? Joining us now is Missy Ryan, national security reporter for The Washington Post. Missy, thanks so much for coming in. First of all, Iran's foreign ministry now calling the U.S. strikes a strategic mistake that will only increase tension and instability in the region. So how does the U.S. military go about threading the needle between deterring Iran and also not sparking the wider conflict the president and Iran says they both don't want?
Yes, Andrea, well, that's exactly what the U.S. military and the Biden administration more generally is trying to do, thread the needle in terms of eroding the military capability of these forces, the Iranian-backed militias and the IRGC itself, to conduct these attacks on American forces in the region. So that would be, drone facilities. We saw them hit command and control nodes, intelligence sites, other sort of depots, weapons depots. They're trying to reduce their military capability and also send a message to Tehran that, the Biden administration is more serious about this, more willing to risk regional instability than it has been in the past, without tipping into a direct conflict with Iran. And I think that's why we didn't see any direct strikes into Iran itself. That clearly would have been an option, but the Biden administration chose to target Iranian assets outside of Iran. And that's what the United States have done in the past. And Iran has shown itself willing to tolerate those kind of attacks to a certain extent in a way that they probably wouldn't if the United States struck within Iran.
While not hitting Iran territorially, but you know better than I how critical the Quds Force, the IRGC, is, the military wing of the regime. So how do we know how much damage we did to the Quds Force's capabilities?
Well, the general who spoke with us last night, General Sims, said that the United States would get a better idea as the sun comes up in the region. So that's a process that's ongoing right now in terms of getting the battle damage assessment. They'll be looking at the extent of the physical damage, and they'll also be collecting intelligence about the operational impact and then potentially the sort of intentions, what they hope will be a change in intentions on the part of the Quds Force, the IRGC, and Iran, the Iranian leadership. So, I think there's no expectation that Iran is going to change its overall position on the U.S. military presence in the region, and this really now decades-long antagonism that we've seen going back to the 1980s between the U.S. and Iranian proxies in the Middle East. But I think the hope that the Biden administration has here is that it can get back to a more tenable detente, a more tenable sort of low-level standoff that we saw for a while before the events of October 7th.
Of course, it wasn't the Quds Force that was involved with the shipping. Was the Quds Force involved with the deaths of the 3 Americans?
There's no evidence that we've seen that it was directly involved. And this really gets, Andrea, to the interesting question of the dynamics and the relationship between the IRGC, the Quds Force, and its proxy clients in Iraq and Syria, the level of direction that they may or may not play. And I think there's an assumption that Iran really has the ability to direct these militants in a way that it might not have. Clearly, Iran has provided, weapons, they provided training, they're there in those countries to a certain extent, but these groups also have their own local agendas, I think, to varying degrees. Lebanese Hezbollah is much closer to Iran than these militias in Iraq and Syria, and then the Houthis in Yemen are in a different category. I really think they have much more autonomy and independence and won't necessarily take directions from Tehran in a way that some of the other groups will. So it's a very complex situation, and I don't know that the U.S. government has full visibility into the agency and dynamics sort of behind the scenes there. But what they're clearly hoping to accomplish with these attacks is an erosion of military capability and then sending a message to Tehran. And I think we also have to note that it also is there's a necessity for President Biden here in an election year to send a message to his domestic constituency and to the Republicans who are criticizing him for not acting strongly enough.